Hello fellow kayakers. I'm doing a video today to demonstrate two methods for attaching the KayaArm to any metal dock. The first method is using blocking, and it's just the blocking is bolted to the dock, okay? And then the KayaArm is screwed then to the blocking. Very simple installation, and it's great for northern applications where you have to take your dock out at wintertime, or you need to take the KayaArm off for freeze up. You can't leave the KayaArm in the water for freeze up, it'll get ruined. This setup, this methodology here is a little bit more complicated, and it's more suited to southern applications where people want to bolt it directly to the dock. I'm going to produce a detailed video showing each method here so that you can follow along and decide which might be the best for your application. Before I get into details today, I'm going to walk through this particular dock. Aluminum docks are typically made with what we call aluminum extrusions that are your stringers. And so you can see, and they're typically 5 1/4 inches from top to bottom. And this is a single wall extrusion in that it's more of a C shape. In some extrusions, there'll actually be a little another piece of metal across here. So it's a hollow extrusion, a square channel, and that gives it a little extra strength. This one doesn't have that, but they are typically the same. You'll see here, this is the ledge that the dock boards sit on. This is, the strength comes from the depth of here. And torsional rigidity, there's a bit with this flange and this flange, but if you put in another piece here, you get better torsional rigidity and you also get more strength. I start with a piece of 2x6 blocking, and you can see it's 2x6, or I can use 2x8, and anywhere between 12 and 18 inches long. I prefer to go to the 18-inch length variety because it allows me to adjust where I place the KayaArm along. That gives me sort of a more adjustment room afterwards. So the first thing I want to do is to figure out where to attach the blocking to the structural member. And what I know is that I can drill in the middle of this structure, I can drill a hole, and I can essentially not weaken the structure, especially if it's a nice round hole. So I want to use a 3/8 inch hole, 2 3/8 inch holes, and 2 3/8 inch holes through here. So I've drilled 2 holes, about 1 inch in from the sides and 2 5/8 inch down from the top. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to then clamp it to the side of the dock and then use these holes as pilot holes to drill through the aluminum structure. So I've clamped my blocking to the structure. Now I've used a little hammer to get it so it's nice and flush there. Now that I have my blocking nice and flush, I can drill my holes straight through here and here. Now the holes have already been drilled, but they're nicely spaced, everything's perfect. And then what I do next is I use 2 carriage bolts, and I'll show them to you here. This particular one, I'm using 3/8 inch diameter, 3-inch long carriage bolts. If your extrusion, you have to measure the distance. If you're a double wall extrusion, you probably need to go with something like 4-inch. And then also what I do is I want to put a couple of nice washers on the back side because that's a bit of a thin plate. So I'm going to put a washer, 2 washers. You can get a fender washer. So that's going to go on the back side. And I'm going to come through, and I like using these carriage bolts because they present a nice clean surface. Okay, you can't snag a bathing suit or cut yourself on that, so it's a nice smooth surface. And once you pound it in, it holds it strong enough so that you can use a socket wrench to tighten it in. Okay, so I'm just going to put these on here. So I attach my blocking with 2 bolts to the structure. Okay, so now I'm going to mount my KayaArm to the blocking. And again, I like to use the clamp. It's nice, hands-free. You don't have to anybody help you. And you want to take the sliding piece out because otherwise it leans in and it's hard to get it all set. So I'm going to use some 3-inch. I can use 2 1/2 3-inch screws, number 8s. I happen to use some coated deck screws. but the better thing to use is stainless steel, so that way don't don't corrode, especially in saltwater applications. So so again, two number 8, say 2.5 or 3-inch screws, and I put them in the outside piece here, and just set them in, and that's really all there is to it. Put them in. You notice we're using nice square drive Red Robertsons here in Canada. You'll have to use something else in the United States, Torx or whatever. Okay, so I have those 2 in. It's being held nicely. I can take my clamp off now. All right, so my next step is to put the shims in, get this KayaArm flush, and then put these 2 screws in. So I'm going to put these one in from one side and one in from the other side. And a little help, you just kind of pull it out on the bottom. And what I typically like to do, and I'm not doing it this time, I like to put the screws through the shims to hold them in place, but I'm not going to be using these. I want to keep these shims for free, so and then what I do, I put these in and then I cut them back to make them clean. So I'm going to have a look and see how plumb I am, and I need to go pretty good there, but I'm going to over plumb them a little bit because this dock is a little bit, there's just a little bit of, it's not quite as strong as what I want to have. So I'll just kind of pull it out and slide that in a little bit more. There we go. All right. And then it's a simple matter of putting these screws. These screws are, 1.5 inches. What you want to do is be able to go through the plate. So, 1 3/4, 1.5 inch screws will go through the aluminum here into your blocking. If you go longer than, say, 1 3/4, you're not going to have enough. You're going to screw into your metal there. So, 1 5/8 inches is fine. And we're just going to go and lock them in. Now, typically, as I said, what I would typically do is these shims would be lower, so I'd be pinning the shims in with the screws themselves. To do next is I would do this little trim. I can leave my shims like this, or I just trim them off. Okay, you can see now completed installation. I put the 2 screws in. I've decided to cut back the shims, so it's a little neater looking, but it's not necessary. It's just what your preference is. Anyway, and the next step then is just to drop the shoe into the sliding channel here and adjust your KayaArm and start kayaking. Now, if you want to do a setup for 2 KayaArms, it's the same situation, same repeat of the same thing, but you're going to set your KayaArms roughly 5 feet apart for a standard kayak that's 10 to 14 feet long. Okay, so this is the second methodology that we use for attaching the KayaArm to a metal dock, and it's going to involve drilling into the structural member of your dock. And so anytime you drill into the structural member, you want to look to see what the manufacturer has done and where they've placed their holes. And so in this instance, you can see that the manufacturer put in, these are 1/4 inch holes up 1 inch from the bottom flange. So what that means is if anytime you want to drill a hole that's 1/4 inch, you want to be at least 1 inch or above towards the center. Again, from the top, you want to be 1 inch or towards the center. All right. So in this example, I drilled them. I put them in 1 1/4 inch in from the bottom, so that and again they're 1/4 inch holes. The 1 inch minimum from the bottom of the flange to where you're going to drill your hole. I had to relocate these holes that the KayaArm comes with were too low. They were going to give me 3/4 inch clearance. So I moved them up. I had to relocate these holes, and I moved them up in such a way that they are 1 1/4 inch from the bottom of the bottom flange. And again, there's a separate video on how to locate those holes in the center of the flange properly. So I determined the best location to secure the top screw for the mounting angle was into this flange. And so and these existing pre-drilled holes didn't line up. So to calculate where to put that, I measured here. I'm measuring it's an inch from the outside face. Then I had to add, this is a 1/4 inch plate, so I had to add 1/4 inch to that. Had to add another 1/4 inch for the bolt diameter, and then I gave it a 1/16. So then so if I add 1 inch plus 1/4 inch plus 1/4 inch plus a 1/16, I get 1 9/16 inch. I centered from that point, from the outside corner to here. And then I pre-drilled that hole. Okay, and so the next thing I've done is I've set myself up again with the clamp, because I want to have the clamp hold this very tightly and firmly, so that there's no gap along the outside edge, you know, of the angle, so it's sitting nice and flush against the front. Okay, and then I'm going to drill through that hole into this flange for this bolt. Now, one of the tricks for drilling straight is to have someone spot with you. Okay, so you can always drill straight down this way looking at things, but you also need to have someone looking at this direction here, and that way you can get a nice straight drill, you know, into here. Because if you get off on an angle, you know, if you get off on an angle like that, it's gonna screw up your flushness to the front. Okay, so I've already gone and done that. I've taken this, I've had a spotter, we've pre-drilled straight down through. Next thing I'm going to do is then insert the bolt. I like to use the nylock nut, and I have stainless steel. It's a 2-inch stainless steel that goes stainless steel 1/4-inch nut bolt. Slides on down, okay, and in on through. Now the other piece that I want to make sure is that, because I'm going to start to crush this down and pull up on this flange and pull down here, I want to have something to prevent the aluminum from deforming greatly. And so I've made to make sure that I have my deck boards or whatever goes in this channel already inserted. Okay, this is very simple. Sit down and then away I go here. And, now that I have the top of the mounting angle clamped down to the stringer, I now need to, and I've re-drilled the holes in the KayaArm mast. I need to then drill the corresponding holes in the structural member, the stringer of the dock. And so to do that, the next step I did was go and use my shims and my level to get it plumb. And I kind of usually over plumb them, because when you put the kayaks in them, it brings them a little bit forward. And so what I did is I take the shim on either side, I shove it in, I get it so I'm the way I like it. And then what I use is I use my clamp, and I hold my clamp nice and tight to hold my shims in, to hold everything flush. And the next step I'm going to do is I just drill with my 1/4-inch drill, and I just slide it through, and away I go, and I drill my hole. Okay, and then I use my 1/4-inch bolts. I have a washer and I have a nylock nut, and these happen to be, you know, I think they're 1.5 inches, but you don't really need to be that. They just have to go through from here, you know, into your structure here, and then I put a washer on the back side, and again, these are stainless steel with a nylock nut. Okay, so you can see now I've got my bolts in, I'm slice and plumb. My next step is just to slide my shoe in, and I'm ready to roll. The other thing, I've cut my shims back. I cut them back, but you cut them back a little more. If you wanted, you could put a piece of aluminum plate to match. It's your choice. Thanks very much for watching today. Have a great day paddling.